What is the world made of? When you look around you, you are seeing a whirling miasma of atomic particles, interpreted by your brain into comprehensible forms. What is a coalescent lump of oxygen and silicon we call a stone? The swirling gas of oxygen and nitrogen we use to breathe we call air. Humans cannot see the fine particles that make up reality, nor predict their trajectories. So, we have to take a lexicon of names for the things around us and their uses. Far from simplifying things, this makes the experience of living more complex. There are only 118 known elements that make up the totality of matter, and of those atoms, there are even fewer atomic particles that form these 118. In other words, the human animal does not oversimplify the world, but makes it more vastly complex. Hydrogen and helium alone make up 99% of the entire universe's mass. So the question of what the world is made of has two answers. There is the material answer, or in Gnostic terms, the Hylic answer. The universe is comprised of many different atoms in many different arrangements. This answer is rather open and shut. And while there do remain mysteries in physics and chemistry, these questions are a matter of study, not philosophy. A much more compelling answer to what is the world made of is the mental answer. In Gnostic terms, the psychic answer. A way to rephrase this new question is, what does the world symbolize? Or, what does the world mean? Earth, water, air, and fire.
Water, fire, air, and dirt. Fucking magnets, how do they work?
The four classical elements are an enduring symbol even after their scientific basis has been eroded. These four are the psychic elements, the four things that any other thing in existence can be boiled down to. In Pokemon, there are 4 legendary Pokemon that embody these 4 elements, but interestingly, these elements are not the same as the classic 4 in alchemy. First is Groudon, controlling the land. Next is Kyogre of the sea. Next is Rayquaza, above them in the skies. These represent earth, water, and air respectively, but fire has been co-opted by Groudon of the land. But there is a fourth in this construction, a new concept, Deoxys of the void of space high above. In this way, Pokemon itself has 4 primary elements, but 4 elements of a different kind, offering a different interpretation of that central question, what is the world made of? Through examination of these 4 beings, we can understand the Pokemon world, but also our own. So let's examine these 4 beasts from the lens of Gnosticism and see what we can learn about the real world we live in now. In the beginning, there was only Aus. And with Aus were the offspring, Aya and Ea. And together, among the stars they labored, fashioning lights in the firmament. Yet of all the spears that they beheld, they sought the fairest, and to it they resolved to grant the gift of life. But first, the sphere was to be made ready. So, Aus and Aya and Ea descended, and gazed upon the barren rock, and lo, into its face they breathed as one, and from their breath came forth their child, Hoenn, the tripartite monogeny. Hoenn, being as a newborn, wept with tears unnumbered, and from the tears were gathered the oceans. And Hoenn, being as a newborn, strove and wrestled. And from the struggle, the mounds of rock and soil were lifted above the deep. And Hoenn, being as a newborn, cried aloud with a mighty voice, and from the howling was the air spread forth above the waters. And Aya and Ea departed, beholding with gladness what was wrought. But Aus turned and showed forth the forbidden side, Gyr, whose eyes were as crimson coal. And from the sideways place did Gyr draw forth another, and of the void it shaped Deoxys, a being at a right angle to the universe. Its form was strange, bending and folding as though not of the same creation, body as crystal wrought of stars. Deoxys looked upon Hoenn and was filled with envy, for Hoenn was born of breath and of tears and struggle, but Deoxys was wrought in silence, having no mother's comfort nor father's voice, but only the claw of Gyr. In its name, Archcaneus Nothi. Okay, look at this thing. What the fuck? How did they make a Pokemon this cool? A green dragon with lipstick on. I fucking love this girly. And look at her shiny form. She's a menace. Honestly, the super ancient Pokemon might be the hardest legendary lineup they've ever dropped, and I'm fully biased by my first fully completed Pokemon game being Emerald back in the day. But still, argue with the wall. Nothing has topped this squad's vibes since. Let's jump in. Kyogre. Kyogre. In Japanese, Kyoga. The etymology is from Kai, or sea, and ogre, or orca. The species is sea basin Pokemon. The type is water. Kyogre has two forms, base and primal, and they have a base stat total of 670 and 770. Kyogre doesn't just live in the ocean, he is the ocean, a distilled concept more ancient than conception. Its body shape is borrowed from real-world killer whales, a sort of dignity and grace with added severity. It's less like an animal and more like the idea of one, the memory of the sea's creatures. Water is not just life-giving, it is vast and empty and massive and full at the same time. It erases boundaries, it fills every space, it's overwhelming. Kyogre represents the ocean that does not care if anything survives in it, only that it continues to live and expand. Its Pokédex entries are as follows. Kyogre has the power to create massive rain clouds that cover the entire sky and bring about torrential downpours. This Pokémon saved people who were suffering from droughts. Kyogre is named in mythology as of the Pokémon that expanded the sea by covering the land with torrential rains and towering tidal waves. It took to sleep after a cataclysmic battle with Groudon. This Pokémon is said to have expanded the sea by bringing heavy rains. It has the power to control water. Through primal reversion, and with nature's full power, it will take back its true form. It can summon storms that cause the sea levels to rise. Kyogre reverted to this state via the blue orb, which contains the energy of the primordial world. Kyogre's body resembles seawater. Through this, we can see a vision of Kyogre being associated with rain, as well as in explicit conflict with Groudon. 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 In Japanese, Guradon. The etymology comes from ground in English, do or earth in Japanese, and a don suffix from dinosaurs. The species is continent Pokemon. Its type is ground or ground fire. It has two forms, base and primal form, and its base stat totals are 670 and 770, respectively. Groudon is associated with the land, continents, and the idea of the habitable earth. Interestingly, unlike many legendary duos, Groudon is explicitly weak to Kyogre, even 4 times weak to it in primal mode. Her ability, Desolate Land, compensates for this, but it seems like Groudon is the weaker of the duo, on face value, reflecting how the sea is larger than the land in the real world. Groudon represents the vision of the world that we rely on, the illusion that the ground beneath us is permanent, that stability is the default. But underneath that illusion is constant effort, constant resistance, a quiet ongoing struggle to hold the shape against something given the chance would wash it all away. Its Pokédex entries are as follows. Groudon has long been described in mythology as the Pokémon that raised the lands and expanded continents. This Pokémon took to sleep after a cataclysmic battle with Kyogre. Groudon has the power to scatter rain clouds and make water evaporate with light and heat. It came as a savior to people who had been suffering from terrible floods. Groudon appeared in mythology as the creator of the land. It sleeps in magma underground and is said to make volcanoes erupt upon awakening. Through primal reversion and with full nature's power, it will take back its true form. It can cause magma to erupt and expand the landmass of the world. This is Groudon's true form, restored using the red orb. Energy spills from its body in the form of magma. Like Kyogre, we see the theme of fire, earth, and an explicit conflict with the oceans. Rayquaza. Rayquaza, or Rayquaza. In Japanese, Rekuza. The etymology is from the Japanese Reku, meaning skyrending, Quasar, or Raika from Hebrew, which means firmament. The species is sky-high Pokemon. The type is dragon and flying, and it has two forms, a base form and a mega form. The base stat totals are 680 and 780, respectively. Rayquaza is above Kyogre and Groudon in the typical 2-in-1 legendary style, having a higher base stat total and resisting both water and ground types. She is green, which complements the blue and red of the others. Rayquaza is a dragon, but not in the grounded terrestrial typical to myth. She is elongated, serpentine, weightless, something with no legs that is never meant to touch the ground. Her body coils like a current, not through water, but through the unseen architecture of the sky. Her Pokédex entries are as follows. Rayquaza lived for hundreds of millions of years in the Earth's ozone layer, never descending to the ground. This Pokémon appears to feed on water particles in the atmosphere. A Pokémon that flies endlessly in the ozone layer. It is said it would descend to the ground if Kyogre and Groudon were to fight. It flies forever through the ozone layer, consuming meteoroids for sustenance. The many meteoroids in its body provide the energy it needs to mega evolve. A shooting star streaking across the night sky may in fact be Mega Rayquaza, flying gracefully after a meteoroid. In these entries we see that Rayquaza is long-lived like Kyogre and Groudon. It is a mediator between them, and it lives so high up that it cannot be seen and is said to eat meteorites. More on this association with space and the ozone layer soon. Finally, Deoxys. Deoxys. In Japanese, Deokishisu. The etymology comes from DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. The species is the DNA Pokemon. The type is Psychic. It has 4 forms: normal, attack, defense, and speed forms. In all of its forms, its base stat total is 600. Deoxys is the odd one out, and its inclusion in the trio is slightly contested. It has little to do with Kyogre and Groudon, but it is depicted in conflict with Rayquaza in the anime films and the Delta episode. More on this later. It has a lower base stat total, which is the same as the other lesser legends like Landorus and the Lati twins, as well as some normal Pokemon like Alakazam. It has 4 forms that alter its stats between a balanced spread: an attack spread with an attack of 170, a defense spread with a defense and special defense of 160, and a speed spread with a speed of 180. It is a mythical Pokemon, which in the early generations means it is unavailable outside of special real-world events, which means it is inaccessible in-game. The main oddity of Deoxys is that associated with both space and DNA, which are 2 very different concepts that are difficult to reconcile. More on this later. Its Pokédex entries are as follows. Normal form. The DNA of a space virus underwent a sudden mutation upon exposure to a laser beam and resulted in Deoxys. The crystalline organ on this Pokemon's chest appears to be its brain. Attack form. This Deoxys has transformed into its aggressive guise. It can fool enemies by altering its appearance. Defense form. When it changes form, an aurora appears. It absorbs attack by altering its cellular structure. Speed form. A Pokemon that mutated from an extraterrestrial virus exposed to a laser beam. Its body is configured for superior agility and speed. In its Pokédex, we see references to an alien virus. Now, I hate to be a pedant about this, but viruses don't actually have DNA. They self-replicate using RNA. I'm not sure what is meant by alien virus, so I went digging in the original Japanese to see if I could find anything. Here's a direct translation from Ruby's Japanese entry. Exposed to a laser light, space virus DNA suddenly mutated and awakened this Pokemon. The crystal-like structure in its chest seems to be its brain. The word uirusu, spelled with katakana, seems to be just the borrowed English word for virus, and in fact has no further translation. So the idea of space virus DNA is a little difficult to grasp, but the bottom line is, the thing's from space. It's Funk McLovin, hovering above reality, slicing through the static with the lucid mind clarity. Gnostic commentary with the planetary cadence. Patreon's the portal where we upgrade your awakeness. Step into my temple, no ego, no hassle. My Patreon sermon's free, no password. You fund the funk, keep my heart thumping. Support the revelation, keep the cosmos drumming. Then I shift gears, smooth on the tube for you. Breaking media down like a digital guru. Catch me in the tall grass, data stream broadcast. Great hits with the wit, my style's unmatched. Funk McLovin, double life mission. Patreon and YouTube, I'm a mind physician. Gnosis in the morning, fresh beats at night. Two places, one vibe, let's keep it tight. Join the Patreon if you feel the vibe. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm also on Bandcamp. Sorry, I got something in my teeth, fuck. Was that popcorn? Anyway, bye. Most of the lore on these Pokemon comes from a variety of games. Ruby and Sapphire give us information on Groudon and Kyogre respectively, and Emerald expands on both, as well as Rayquaza. But the most information comes from the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire remakes later. There are also depictions of Deoxys in Fire Red and Leaf Green. The mythology will be synthesized from Oras and the Emerald game, and it is as follows. In the beginning, when the waters, ground, and air did not have name, there were three great powers that shaped the world in endless, relentless striving. One was Kyogre, the vast and ancient sea, whose breath came from the rain, and whose anger rose as towering waves. Another was Groudon, the living earth, who heaved continents from the deep and split the world into fire and trembling stone. Where Kyogre surged, Groudon resisted. Where Groudon rose, Kyogre beat with waves. And so the world was caught between flood and foundation, endless water and unyielding land. Until one day, the sky darkened with storms, the earth broke under its weight, and there was no place left to stand nor swim. From the highest reaches of the skies, Rayquaza descended, who dwelt beyond the reach of storm and stone. It came not in rage, but in authority, and its coming, the world was still. Rayquaza parted the great forces and cast them into slumber. Kyogre in the seafloor cavern, and Groudon within the magma of Mount Chimney. And though balance was given form, it was not to last. 1,000 years before the current age, a star fell from the heavens, striking the land that would become Sootopolis City. The impact tore open the world, and in that wound, the ancient powers stirred again. Kyogre and Groudon awoke, and their war was raged anew. The people of the land, the Draconids, lifted their voices in prayer to the one who dwells above, Rayquaza, as their ancestors had bid them. Rayquaza answered. Drawing upon ancient power, it descended again, stripping Kyogre and Groudon of their primal power, and cast them back into their prisons of sea and sediment. The storm ceased, and the earth was still again. Yet even sealed gods are not beyond the reach of humans. In a later age, those arose who sought to reshape the world in their own design. The followers of the sea, Team Aqua, and the followers of the land, Team Magma, who would awaken the primal powers of ocean and continent. They named their ambitious project Project Azoth, and they reached into the earth to make the primal beasts stir. But Kyogre and Groudon would not heed them. And once again, as the balance threatened to break, a hero called on Rayquaza tamed the beasts for themselves. There is one final tale, spoken quietly. One of Rayquaza's fury turned upward, not downward. The Draconids built a pillar to the sky in the ocean, and another falling star threatened it. The hero who tamed the primal beasts and another from the Draconid tribe joined in force to use technology to destroy the imminent destruction. Rayquaza gifted these heroes her most ancient and powerful form, shooting into the sky like an arrow and shattering the falling star. But from the star's depths, there lived a secret being named Deoxys, as ancient as the primal beasts but alien and strange. Deoxys, too, was overcome. Were these but myths, or do these stories hide truth? Whatever the case, stories endure. Some say they're gods, eternal and indifferent, and some say they are mere animals, powerful beyond measure. But the land, sea, and sky are not empty, inhabited by presences beyond comprehension. So that's the lore of Rayquaza, Groudon, and Kyogre in-game, but how does it stack up to real-world mythology? 1. Leviathan, Behemoth, and Ziz. The Leviathan is a mythological beast with many meanings that originates from Hebrew mythology and was iterated on in Greek. First appearing in the book of Job in the Hebrew Bible, it is a massive beast that God has defeated. Leviathan represents the idea of chaos and God Yahweh Elohim's supremacy over that chaos. Leviathan essentially is a proof of divine authority. Leviathan is a serpent associated with the seas and resembles both Rayquaza and Kyogre, immense, unknowable, and overwhelming. The Gnostic idea of Leviathan associates it with the Kenoma, or the barrier between our world and the fullness of the Pleroma. Instead of just a beast in the ocean, it becomes a kind of boundary, a threshold, something that exists at the edge of reality itself, reinforcing the idea that there are layers to existence that can't easily be crossed. The Behemoth is another Hebrew mythological beast, also shown in Job. It represents chaos, but it is grounded, massive, immovable, and tied to the land. It's less about overwhelming force and more about unstoppable presence. If Leviathan is the sea at its most uncontrollable, Behemoth is the earth at its most unyielding. Together, they are a land and sea monster duo who complement each other, like Kyogre and Groudon, and are overcome by the higher power of God, or in Pokemon's case, Rayquaza. This positions Kyogre and Groudon as malefic and Rayquaza as benefic. The odd man out is Ziz, who is not in the Book of Job, but is in the Hebrew mythology as a griffin-based bird. Ziz rules the sky in the same way Leviathan rules the sea and Behemoth rules the land. It's less defined in surviving texts, but its role is clear. It completes a three-part structure: land, sea, and sky, a full cosmology. And once you see that structure, it becomes very hard to ignore. 2. Rainmakers. I've discussed this previously, but one of the most common and enduring universal myths is the figure of the rainmaker. In cultures that rely on rains to assist in food cultivation, rainmakers are a massively important magical figure, both as magicians in tribal groups as well as gods in local mythology. When your food, your economy, and your survival hinge on whether or not the rains come, weather stops being background noise. The most common rainmaker is the king of the Greek Olympians, Zeus. He's often remembered as the god of thunder, of lightning bolts hurled from the sky, but those are just the most visible expressions of something that lies deeper. Zeus is a rain bringer, a fertility god, paralleled by the Roman god Jupiter or Jove. These gods are the kings of their pantheons because people worship them the most due to their massive influence on rain, the economy, and living standards. More on Zeus later. Kyogre is also a rainmaker, said to have ended droughts and blessed the people. Other rain or water gods include Hapi from Egyptian Kemetism, who controlled the annual flooding of the Nile, Tonanili of the Navajo desert-dwelling Native Americans, and Tlaloc of the Aztec religion, who was a god of rain, thunder, and lightning. Rain is associated with sustenance, fertility, and relief, and is one of the symbols from which entire religions are born. The deity Baal was contemporary with the deity Yahweh, who later became the god of the Jewish religion in the Proto-Jewish Levant region. 3. Anthropomorphization of the earth. If the rainmaker governs what comes from above, then the earth deity answers a different, equally urgent question: what sustains us from below? Another incredibly common universal myth is the anthropomorphized earth. We see this today in the idea of Mother Earth, or Mother Nature, and there are innumerable ancient deities who embodied some aspect of nature, from fertility to the elements. Gaia is the most primordial, the earth itself, a foundational being from which everything else emerges. Later figures like Demeter and her daughter Persephone redefine that concept into something more cyclical and human. They embody agriculture, harvest, and the changing seasons. The fragile contract between people and the land they depend on. In Egyptian Kemetism, there is also Geb, who had associations with the underworld. Like rainmakers, earth gods are invoked to increase the fertility of the land as well as yield from crops. Interestingly, Groudon differs from these, in that Groudon has a very masculine form, being bright red and angular, where most Mother Earth figures are associated with femininity and greenness. Groudon, then, fits into a lineage that sketches back tens of thousands of years with a twist. It rejects the softness often associated with earth deities, and instead leans into something more harsh and volatile. Not the earth as a mother, but the earth as something we have to fight to exist in at all. 4. The four elements. I spoke in the introduction about the four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Even though there are four elements and the weather trio are only three, all four elements are represented. Kyogre represents water and Rayquaza represents air, and Groudon represents both earth and fire. Why are earth and fire paired in this way? Groudon represents the negative side of the earth and the desolation of the land, also being associated with volcanoes. In Pokemon, there are 18 elements or types that Pokemon can embody. These 18 types have the names of the four classical elements, such as ground, fire, water, and flying types, representing earth, fire, water, and air. There's also the rock type, for some reason. I've always found that redundant. The other Pokemon types seem to symbolize real-world phenomena, like electricity and steel, but also more vague ideas like darkness and ghosts. Types also have advantages over other types, meaning not all elements are equal. In Platonic and Neoplatonic philosophy, the four elements, sometimes called the roots, aren't the beginning of reality. They're expressions of something more fundamental, the prima materia, a single, undifferentiated substance from which all things emerge. Everything that exists is just a variation of this underlying material, shaped into different forms. This idea is sometimes extended into a fifth element, quintessence, or aether. Something pure, something more complete, often associated with the heavens rather than the earth, the thing that exists above the others, or perhaps before them. Fire is sharp, subtle, and mobile, air is blunt, subtle, and mobile, water is blunt, dense, and mobile, and the earth is blunt, dense, and immobile. Kyogre as water is dense and mobile, shifting, flowing, impossible to contain. Groudon, as the earth fused with fire, becomes something more dense but volatile, caught between immobility and eruption. And Rayquaza, the distant and untouchable being that resembles air as well as the fifth element, a presence that doesn't simply participate in the system but oversees it. This read reframes the trio entirely, not as three creatures representing three elements, but as a distorted reflection of a much older idea. The world is built from a handful of fundamental forces, and that somewhere just beyond them, there is something that holds it all together. 5. The three primes. Another set of basic elements from alchemy are the three prime, or the tria prima. These three substances come from the prima materia like the four elements, but are more specific. The three primes are salt, sulfur, and mercury, and these three alchemical materials reflect the tripartite self, both from alchemy and Gnosticism. Salt represents the hylic self, mercury the psychic self, or spirit, and sulfur represents the pneumatic soul. The tria prima are named by the alchemist Paracelsus, and while they share names with physical elements, they are not one-to-one. Each of the three primes represent two different elements in conjunction. Salt is earth and water, mercury is water and air, and sulfur is fire and air. According to Paracelsus, everything can be broken down into these three primes. The associations of the three primes aren't exactly the same as the weather trio, but there are certain places of overlap. Groudon represents a conjunction of fire and earth, creating something like reactive sulfur. Kyogre represents water in something like subtle and fluid mercury, and Rayquaza is associated with air and mercury as well. There is no one-to-one association here, but we're getting closer to the symbolism of these creatures, elements, and materials embodied by the three primal ancient beasts. 6. Deoxys and Panspermia. I haven't discussed Deoxys yet because, as stated, it's the odd one out. There's a number of associations that it could have, such as with Aether or the Prima Materia, since it comes from a domain above the Earth, in space. The other sticking point is the theming with DNA. Deoxys is simultaneously extraterrestrial, as well as associated with the blueprint of life on Earth. There are a number of fringe theories about the origins of life that Deoxys reflects. The idea that aliens seeded life on Earth is common from Scientology to ancient Greek theories. Broadly, this concept is called a very funny name, panspermia. Let's all hear that again so we can get the giggles out. Panspermia. The most basic and least conspiratorial version of panspermia is the idea that microbes and bacteria exist in space and disperse through comets which land on planets and propagate. After millions of evolutionary years, these bacteria develop into the extant life that we see on Earth. The actual scientific evidence for panspermia is dubious, but it does explain the rather strange contradiction at the heart of Deoxys. 7. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Land, sea, and sky is a common trope, as discussed, but it has its origins in Greek myth. The sons of Ouranos, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, drew lots for what part of the world would be their domain. Zeus gained the sky, Poseidon the oceans, and of course, Hades drew the short straw and was consigned to the underworld, or in Greek myth, the literal underground. Hades, though he drew the short straw, did gain access to the metals and materials inside the earth as well, so it wasn't a total loss. As for Deoxys, there are no real overlaps there. Deoxys came forth from the black expanse and gazed upon the fairest planet. Descending to the weeping newborn Hoenn, it spake unto each part of its body in turn. Deoxys asked the eyes of Hoenn, "What is thy favorite part?" And the eyes answered, "The sea, which sprang from me," and they shone blue as the deepest waters. Deoxys asked the mouth of Hoenn, "What is thy favorite part?" And the mouth answered, "The air which was born of me," and the tongue turned green as leaves in the wind. Deoxys asked the hands of Hoenn, "What is thy favorite part?" And the hands answered, "The land which came from me," and they turned red and clasped together as one. And behold, Hoenn was sundered within itself. The red hands contended, the green tongue contended, and the blue eyes contended. And thus Hoenn was divided into three: Groudon, the land; Kyogre, the sea; and Rayquaza, the sky. Deoxys slid away, its visage hidden, smiling with no mouth, leaving behind the strife it had sown. Aya and Ea beheld their offspring with sorrowful eyes, as their hearts were heavy. And for 1,000 years the three fought, the land, the sea, and the sky, until weariness overcame them, and all fell into a deep and endless slumber. In its name, Archkinaeus Nothi. Comparing the weather trio to alchemy and Platonism got us somewhere. The basic idea is that the world is made up of containable, measurable elements, but there is no absolutely direct parallel between these systems and the Pokemon we see. There's something missing. The missing element, of course, is Gnosticism. I've spoken in previous videos and earlier in this video about the tripartite self, the idea that a human has three souls: hylic physical, psychic mental, and the pneumatic spiritual. In the previous video about the Gen 4 Lake Guardian trio, I have discussed the internal hylic, psychic, and pneumatic selves. This idea is reflected once again by the Rayquaza, Groudon, and Kyogre and Deoxys, but not on the personal scale. Instead of representing the tripartite self, this trio represents the tripartite world. Each one of the beasts represents a physical or hylic domain, that's true, but if we examine the symbolism of each of these domains, we can further understand not only the world of Pokemon, but ourselves. 1. The hylic Groudon.
And the Sand Guardian, Guardian of the Sand. Poseidon quivers before him! Fuck off!
What is the material world like? It is a great place of beauty, but also danger and absurdity. It is large and sometimes clumsy. The way that people can be, randomly injured or killed, makes the material world seem dangerous. The material world, however, also nourishes us. As said before, Groudon is associated with Mother Earth and all her bounty, but Groudon is a more violent and raging form of this nature, symbolizing both fertile earth and raging volcanoes. The hylic world around us is raging and chaotic, like the behemoth, and like Primal Groudon, it embodies both solid ground and raging fire. Even so, without Groudon's land, we would have nowhere to live. We are all hylic beings, and we require to become subservient to nature to live, even if nature is chaotic and terrifying. And when we appreciate its chaos, we can more appreciate its inherent beauty. In the games Ruby and Sapphire and their remakes, Team Magma sees that more land will allow more humans to exist, and give them a physical plane to occupy. A reading from the Gospel of Philip, translated by Wesley W. Eisenberg. The world came about through a mistake, for he who created it wanted to create it imperishable and immortal. He fell short of attaining his desire, for the world never was imperishable, nor for that matter was he who made the world. For things are not imperishable, but suns are. Nothing will be able to receive imperishability if it does not first become a sun. But he who has not the ability to receive, how much more will be he unable to give? 2. The psychic Kyogre.
Hello?
Water is a universal symbol for the subconscious. The mind is deep, and water represents not only literal water, but the abject depth of the human brain. The psychic world is sifting and difficult to navigate through the ocean, but it must be navigated and discovered. Rain, too, is a psychic symbol. Rain represents renewal and relief when it comes after a drought, but it can also represent the raging of a storm. The psychic world is subject to both of these forces. Kyogre's body is wide and encompassing, but it is also smooth and gentle. Being swallowed by a whale is a recurring symbol in mythology, from Jonah to Pinocchio, representing the character forced to face themselves, forced to accept their own thoughts, a place to go which is strictly internal. In the games of Ruby and Sapphire and their remakes, Team Aqua sees that more sea will allow more life to flourish. It will bring bountiful food from the waves, and it will bring rains to fertilize the lands. From the Exegesis on the Soul, translated by Marvin Meyer. As long as the soul goes on running around everywhere, sleeping with whomever she meets and defiling herself, she will suffer her deserved punishment. But when she perceives the troubles she is in, weeps before the Father and repents, then the Father will pity her, and make her womb turn from the external and turn inward again, and she will recover her proper character. 3. The pneumatic Rayquaza.
Run.
Kyogre and Groudon are both depicted as in conflict, both in themselves and through the conflict between teams Magma and Aqua in Pokemon Emerald. The Hylic and Psychic self are in this way somewhat at odds. Sometimes the Hylic world prevents us from reaching our psychic goals. Sometimes something deficient in our psychic world prevents us from accessing Hylic resources. This conflict is inherent. Our thoughts and our reality are seldom completely in tune with each other. Groudon is the land and Kyogre is the sea. They fight for space on a globe that only has finite space. Rayquaza is the mediator between these two impulses. The sky on Earth blankets the entire world. It contains the air we breathe in, which by mass is the resource we need the most of. Just like the sky covers the land and makes it one, the pneuma, the soul, covers the self and makes it one. The hylic and psychic are not different things. They are part of one thing. The two-ness is an illusion that is dispelled by the third thing that covers both of them. From the Gospel of Thomas, Logion 50. If they say to you, "Where have you come from?" say to them, "We have come from the light. We are its children, and we are the elect of the living Father." 4. Deoxys and cosmic tension.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
Rayquaza, the being above Kyogre and Groudon, is in conflict with something higher still, Deoxys, from space. Space in the literal sense is a vacuum, a mass of stars and planets that as far as we know is dead and empty. Space is formidable and indomitable, a human obliterating nothingness that exists outside of our comforting, if flawed, planet. The world, or in the Greek, cosmos, is the realm we are trapped in, and Rayquaza is in conflict with the symbol of that world, the alien bearing our very DNA, the external and the internal paradoxically intertwined. The figure of Abraxas is of note in esoteric and Gnostic systems alike, a symbol of a rooster with snake legs and a human torso, the ultimate symbol in the resolution of opposites. Could Deoxys echo Abraxas, the outer world and the inner world entwined together? And of course, what could this symbolize that Deoxys and Rayquaza, the pneumatic world, are at odds? From the Gospel of Thomas, Logion 22. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make male and female into a single one, then you will enter the kingdom. In a previous video, I outlined 9 Gnostic phases and their meanings. During the course of this series, I will be categorizing each of the legendary Pokemon into one of these 9 phases. For more information about the phases, look at my video about it, link in the description. All 3 of the main trio occupy the Radiance phase, since they are archontic, controllers and/or creators of physical matter. Deoxys, who embodies something more personal and rebellious, occupies the Chaos phase. So far, we have discussed many archontic beings, from Dialga and Palkia to the World Trio, but we will very soon discuss more in-depth and more varied deities in the Pokemon world. For the last part of this video, I want to acknowledge some points some people might raise in response. First of all, the numerology of this video is a stretch. There are 4 alchemical elements, but only 3 worldly guardians. Getting them to fit together requires a little bit of suspension of disbelief, even if Groudon does represent both earth and fire. Still, the numerology is not the primary focus of the video, so I'm assuming most people aren't too bothered by it. Second, there's a broad question in Pokemon mythology of embodiment versus creation. Previously, with Dialga and Palkia, I discussed the fact that they are not necessarily creators of time, but in fact only control it. The same goes for these Pokemon, who can be understood in some way as subordinate to Dialga and Palkia. It might be worth making some kind of family tree for all of this in the future to kind of disambiguate it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and because I'm trying to get some more eyes on this project, share it on social media and Reddit if you can. It would mean a lot to me. This video series is my own quest for Gnosis. And now, a Gnostic prayer of my own writing. The humans in congregation hear the vitality of my words. I share with your minds the truth. I offer the silent depth and a glimpse of the monad. Amen, amen, lego humin. The ending of the words is Nothi ton logan.